Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Friday talk hosted by Lester and Harrow Brahmakumaris. Very interesting topic this evening. Finding and holding my quiet within. Sitting in silence and see what happens. Very interesting. We have a very special speaker, Toots Becketts. She's been practicing Raj Yoga meditation since 2001. She currently works full-time supporting children, parents and teachers in an educational setting. So just to say, after she's shared on this topic, there'll be time for questions and answers. And if you've got any comments, please put them in the chat and they'll be picked up after she's shared. So a very warm welcome to Toots. Thank you.
So a very good evening to everyone who's joining us on this Friday evening talk. I hope you can all hear me clearly, and it's wonderful to be online with you all to look at this fascinating topic. I would almost call it now an essential topic, finding and holding the quiet within. Maybe back in the day, 10, 20 years ago, finding the quiet within possibly was a little easier, but also didn't feel quite so urgent or quite so necessary. Whereas now, in the times that we find ourselves in, whether for us individually, but certainly collectively, here on planet Earth for humanity, they are chaotic and they are scary. And they're often incredibly stressful. You know, if we know, don't we? We tune into the news, we see the sorrow, we see a lot of horror in this world of ours. And even if our own individual life is fairly quiet and moves forward, we still find that within our own minds, our inner worlds, there's also a lot of noise in there. And there tends to be a lot of anxiety in there. So the byline this evening is sit in silence and see what happens. Well, I laughed when I read that because I know for me, certainly before having a very regular meditation practice, and even with actually a meditation practice, just to sit in silence and see what happens is usually when I notice all the many different thoughts that are springing into action and making themselves jump out into my mind and pull my attention towards them because they've got an opportunity to do that. So yes, we do need to sit quietly, we do need to sit in silence, and we also need to see what happens. And yet certainly we cannot, it's unrealistic to hold the expectation that we will just see this beautiful, tranquil, quiet mind emerge itself. And yes, that is what we can create and we can get in touch with. In my experience, it takes application, it takes attention, and that will start to happen. So this evening, we're going to look at how we make that happen for us. So before we look at that, I just wanted to pick up on a few quotes that I read just around this notion of what a quiet mind means. And the first quote I'm going to speak is that a quiet mind is not an empty mind. And I feel this has been a very important part of my investigation, that this journey to a place of quietude inside myself is, and it hasn't been, and it continues to not be, thank goodness, a journey into emptiness. In fact, it's the opposite. It feels like it is a journey into fullness, yet a sweet feeling of quiet. And this is something that we often do not learn, that there is underneath all the many open programs, if you like, that are running in our minds all the time. There is this still and beautiful place that is underneath all that there is, the Brahma Kumaris, we say this word Om Shanti. There is a place of peace. And peace, what is peace? Peace is an active energy. It's light. It's full of beauty. And it's also particular in that there is the absence of conflict within it. And when we start to hold the premise that this peace, this beautiful feeling, is deep down inside me, it's deep down inside you, it's deep down inside every human being, and yet it is deep down that, and often we are really not aware of it, and we don't feel it. And it's very, very linked to finding the quiet and then also holding the quiet within. Another quote: quieten the mind and the soul will speak. Intuition will voice. So indicating again that as the mind releases some of its hectic thinking, its busy thinking, its continual traveling to this person and that person, this place and that place, this thing to do, that thing to do, this thing that happened in the past, this worry of the future. As all of these programs, if you like, trains of thought that are running in the mind, as I learn to find a quiet space and hold it, I start to sit in this actively sweet place that feels good. It's like, it feels comfortable. It feels easy. It feels sweet. And as I open that space up, then it's as though I start to get in touch with my intuition. And we all have moments of this, or hopefully we do. Some of us are less in touch than others, but there's a notion that yes, when I listen to this voice inside, when I listen to my intuition, that there's also somehow an inner wisdom in there. That when I hear and I work with, it helps, it finds solutions. It's a positive place within us. And I tap in to a place that supports me in decision making. It supports me in interaction. It actually makes life flow in that sense. And this is certainly the experience I have. It's certainly the experience that I'm always paying attention, I want to work on, because don't we all wish to flow through this river of life, rather than feel that we're, maybe we're bouncing from bank to bank, or we are getting stuck in all the debris in the flow of the mind, and all the broken twigs, in a sense, of the feelings that maybe we hold. But our aim, and as meditators, our aim is to really feel the flow of consciousness, to feel the beauty within, and to do our best to move with it and notice. And this word notice I'm going to bring up a few times, because this is part of the finding of that space, is to start to notice, or if I'm very experienced at it, to continue to notice. So in this world of hecticness on the outside, often a lot of busyness on the inside, we often find that the mind feels overloaded. It feels full. And I work in my professional life sometimes with supporting on a fairly, what would I say, on a sort of first aid basis rather than a deeper level, but supporting myself, but also supporting those around me with mental health, and also when people at work, and I work in a busy primary inner city school, when children feel stressed by what's going on in their learning or their teaching or their lives outside of that, but to look at what's going on inside the mind. And we all notice, and there is a model in terms of mental health to understand that inside us, we develop something called a stress bucket or a stress container, or we have this vessel inside the mind that carries a lot of all the different to-dos, or the not to-dos, or the need to-dos, or don't know how to-dos, but also all our memories, and maybe our memories are cluttered with positive and negative experiences, and also our worries. And this is where the stress comes in, because worry is around fear for the future. And this is going on individually in us. It's also, again, it's going on collectively for humanity these days, with so much looking insecure. So in the mind, when there is stress, and when there are many different stresses, it's as though this container fills up, and how do I manage it? And in a particular model, it is said, well, we need taps, we need de-stressors, we need a way to just release all of those different thoughts. And definitely, in my experience, the most powerful tap of all, there are many taps. For example, some of us have found our own taps as we've moved through life. For me, it's going for a walk, it's possibly playing a musical instrument, it's possibly connecting with a friend, it's doing all these things, it's eating well, it's sleeping well, all these different aspects that help our well-being. But actually, more than all of those things, it is about finding this quiet space inside that feels comfortable, where I feel completely at ease and can just step inwards into that place and relax, and really relax internally. And this, for me, is the greatest tap, and it's also a tap that we can all learn to use. When we quiet our mind and open our heart, we uncover our natural, radiant being flowing. Another quote. So this natural radiant being flowing like a deep, if you like, underground, beautiful river. And underground, it's subconscious, it's deep down inside us. How do we access it? What are the methods? And first of all, it's to trust and have faith that that place is really there. And at this point, I would just like us all to just reflect for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and just remember a moment when you just felt something emerge within you, really peaceful. And it could have been triggered by your outer surroundings, that maybe you were in nature or in a peaceful setting or with people you love. Just see if you can emerge that feeling of just feeling really relaxed. And it may have just been momentary. It might have lasted for weeks, and maybe you're still in it, but just to come back to it, that place where suddenly it's like all the clutter, all the heaviness, all the weight dispersed, and something inside just went, ah, relief. Maybe a memory as a child. Children can access that inner space of peace generally more easily than adults because they haven't developed so much, in a sense, overthinking and over worrying about whatever aspect of life they are challenged by. So they can come back to it more easily. So if you can remember a moment, I'm just remembering a moment when I reunited with a very old friend, and there was such love felt between us, that love of friendship that never, it may not be very, we may not see each other, but when we do, it's always there and strong and solid. And in that moment, just that real feeling, outpouring of love. And now when I look back on it, I think, yeah, where did it come from? It came from that place that is not outside. It can be triggered by something that's going on outside, but actually it's coming from deep within me. It is there. And these are little indications when we get these moments that actually there is this river, there is this well within me that is full of this sweet feeling. And this is where we seek to access. This is when, in my experiences, allows the mind to become quiet, because the mind is a jumpy thing, and it's as though it's always seeking. It's always, it would love to be quiet, but it's as though it's thirsty, and it's seeking support, it's seeking knowledge, it's actually seeking what's deep down inside us, and yet we tend to seek it with our physical senses, with what we see with our eyes, with what we hear with our ears, with what we taste, with what we touch. And in so doing, it's as though the mind always is restless. and fast. So when I realize, and with Raj Yoga meditation, the first concept, if we like, the first spiritual point of understanding is that you, me, all of us, deep down, are beings of peace, are beings of light. There is light in our consciousness, and it's underneath all that isn't, all that clouds that, all that weighs me down, all that takes me into heavy feelings, or that takes me into sorrow, takes me into anger, takes me into desire, takes me into insecurity. It's underneath all that. So having faith and trust that it's there in me, it really is in me, even though at this moment maybe I'm not experiencing it, I can see it maybe as a treasure, like a diamond that is deep in my consciousness, that I can learn to connect with. And it is just one thought away. And it doesn't take time. It takes a moment. It takes a decision. And it also takes just giving myself, yes, some time to be with myself on my own. I don't need to have a particular space, but I do need time to self-reflect and just quietly sit with the self and start to notice what is going on in my mind. And as I notice, and it may be a bit surprising, some of it, again, we hold so many different trains of thought open somehow. We might have thought we'd closed them, but then when we sit quietly and become still, they all pop up very fast. But if we develop this position of, and it's an inner position, so it's a mental position of noticing this, then we can, as though I'm sitting in a comfortable chair, watching the mind, then I can stay at ease with it. If I don't get into that mental position of noticer, then I'm caught up in it, and kaput, off it takes me on its different journeys in various ways. And I'm traveling here and I'm traveling there, to this person, to that person, what happened 2 hours ago, what I'm going to eat for dinner, where am I going to get the money for the next bill, whatever it is, the mind jumps about very fast. But if I can just notice that, and it's like, okay, and be patient with the mind and watch it, notice it, without judging it, and then just say, okay, now I'm going to actually go to that quiet place. And we can, some of us like to visualize, some of us just like to, in a sense, just speak to the mind. I certainly visualize that, I can, for example, visualize an empty room inside all these hectic places in my inner world. There is one room, there is one space that I can create, that I can walk into, that is completely full of light. It's completely up to me what I do with it. No one can intrude in there. It's my creation. It's the creation that's deep within me. So if you like to visualize, you can do that. If you're more auditory as a learner, you can just tell the self, there is this space, there is this place that is light. And as I remind the self that it's there, I start to touch it. I start to feel that in my being there is this light. it may just come for a moment and go, but once I've touched it, it's as though there's then no turning back. It's like, yeah, I got it. That's where the love is. That's where the peace is. That's what I'm searching for. That's what I'm jumping about for in my mind. Actually, it's in me. But then how do I hold it? That's the big one. How do I hold it? So once I discover it, once I feel it, once I stay in it and feel, start to feel quite different in a sense, that I start lightening up in the mind. Yes, other things will come, and of course life demands so incessantly and intently. Yet when I know that the resource I really need to help me keep steady and stable and deal with life as it is here today is inside, also what happens is I start to feel a subtle sense, a new sense of confidence in the self, but to hold it. And this, in a sense, I think is really about practice, but it's also about having faith and having trust in another ingredient. And this ingredient really is what can make the difference. And I say ingredient because if we think of ourselves as deep down having this capacity and this propensity for peace, because we are actually peace deep down, and this energy of love is the power, is the flow of life. And love, I mean the energy that nourishes, the energy that gives, rather than any of the other notions of love we may be holding, but is natural, like nature is. It gives, it nurtures, it cares, it expresses, it dances, it sings, it expresses its beauty, that love, and within it peace. But to hold this, and especially when it doesn't feel like I'm in touch with it so strong, maybe I might begin to notice it, but it still feels that the real steady flow of it I'm not in touch with, then this ingredient is absolutely invaluable. And this ingredient is a source of that spiritual power, or the source of spiritual power. And I'm using that term spiritual power to mean the strength and the brilliance and the beauty and the pure energy of the conscious being, the supreme conscious being. And when we start to recognize that I am intrinsically good, that I heard this phrase, original goodness, last night, that each one of us has original goodness. And when we can work with the self as with that original goodness, but also understand, and even if maybe it is a leap of faith, or maybe it requires me to open up my heart to realize that there is this resource, there is this higher spiritual being, spiritual entity who is resonating at an extraordinary frequency of love that is beyond this world. It's not caught up in the friction of this world. not caught up in the positive, negative causation of matter, but is absolute, pure, benevolent spirit. This makes all the difference, because when we are feeling depleted, when I'm feeling low, when I'm feeling weighed down and struggling, it's as though, yes, mentally I can take on that there is this original goodness, there is this beauty deep down inside the subtle spiritual self, yet I cannot sense any strength in it, or I can only sense a bit of strength in it, and it works for me sometimes and then I lose it. So this is why it's so crucial to have access to this higher, this divine being, because the divine functions consistently, functions steadily, functions constantly, and also out of this aura, if you like, of collective vibrations of all of us on planet Earth, is beyond, and yet is completely accessible. And how accessible? Well, in my experience, again, just through subtle thought, a moment away. So we will, a bit later, look at a meditation commentary to make this connection. But for me, definitely holding this sweet space, which is the quiet within, which is the full place within me, which is the place that I always want to come back to, because it's the secure place inside me. It's the safe place. It's where I feel safe with myself. There is nothing in there that's going to pull my feelings down to self-recrimination, self-criticism, self-comparison, self-blame. That all exists in all the outer layers, if you like, in all the many trains of thought that come and go. But deep inside this inner quiet space, there is just a sweet acceptance, a sweet appreciation, and a joy of being me, of being who I am. Not because of what I do, not because of who I know, not because of where I am, not because of what the body is like, but because that's actually what's deep, deep down inside my being. It exists. It is me. It is somehow touching a sweet truth and wisdom. And this is where the intuitive self seeks to hit, because out of that place also comes answers, comes solutions, comes creativity. Often it's remembered, within music, within great art, that actually it's, for example, within music, it's the silence between the notes that is the music. And in great works of art, it is the artist having gone very deep inside herself, himself, to find that newness, to find that freshness, to express itself in colour. So silence, creating a little bit of space for the self wherever we can. I mean, I use moments in my working life, downtime moments, sitting at a traffic light or sitting in a traffic jam, using that moment, keeping my physical eyes on the ball as such on the gear stick and looking out, but mentally there's a bit of time there. So I can just go inside, find that quiet, reconnect, and reconnect with the one who's beyond it all, who is available to subtly give strengthening spiritual energy to help me hold that quiet and not allow the mind to get flooded with all the other thought patterns. And if they do pop up, if I've got a massive day ahead and many responsibilities and commitments to fulfill, that's okay too. But underneath that, so like behind all that, there is still this resource back to a place of inner safety and security. So yeah, finding quiet places. Think for yourself some quiet moments in your day. It doesn't have to be long, and we don't have to be sitting and as such doing nothing else. You know, there is so much time in our day walking from A to B, you know, maybe doing housework at home, whatever it is, cooking, which are like land that we can reclaim, which often we just allow our mind to sort of rumble on repetitively, maybe worrying about something or remembering conversations repeatedly and not actually getting any resolution through that. But as we really pay attention to noticing that and reminding the self, I can actually, instead of getting caught up in all of that again, I can actually retreat. And we have in Raj Yoga this notion that we have 8 spiritual powers that all come, in a sense, from this place of peace and place of love within each one of us. But yet, if we remember, and I'm going to communicate the first 2, which is the power to withdraw and the power to pack up. We all have these 2 spiritual powers. And withdraw, so to close those programs or to withdraw further inside my inner world from all that disturbs or that bothers or that pulls me out, and withdraw from that and pack up all those thoughts, even all the thoughts that do need attention, they can wait, and to go deeper into this place, this subtle, sweet place of light. It's often said, and a wonderful image to remember, again, method to remember when we do this is being like the tortoise who's moving along and then can just pull himself into his shell. It's often known as introversion, when the ability to turn inwards, and often we see, don't we, where we see images of Buddhas or of icons who are meditating. You see as though the eyes are open, but they're not looking out. They're really looking in. And we as human beings have this incredible ability to do this, whoever we are, wherever we are from. We just need the method, if you like, and practice. And we will start to experience more and more and more this quiet place. And yeah, there will be moments when we practice and it comes quickly and I can feel it again. There'll be other moments where there is a lot going on in the mind and I'm just not able to get underneath it. But when I trust it, when I have another go, when the mind's cleared a bit, for example, maybe at the end of the day or before the day even begins, it's a brilliant time. That's the time that I just cherish and use, and it's the time that sets me up to then head into the working day from a place of positivity and feeling hopeful and ready in that sense. So I'm looking at the time and wondering whether this is the place to stop. I know we have a Q&A coming up, and I think, yes, maybe we stop here, Natalie.
Yes, thank you, Toots. You have got a bit more time, but then there are a few questions, so we can ask them and see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, okay. Quiet mind you said a quiet mind is not an empty mind. So how do I clear my mind of negativity and worry?
Yeah, and there were a couple, well, the key word I would think is, first of all, notice it, which you're doing, and then realize that in a way, I'm not going to clear it away. What I'm going to do is just leave it. I'm going to park it, and I'm going to focus on this deeper, sweeter, quiet place where there is the feeling of ease, where there is in the mind, where there is that feeling of relaxation away from the stressors. And that is what we do in meditation. We do like a creative visualization to get there, to stay there. Yes, all the worries, etc., they're rumbling on, but just notice them and just choose to then go into a different space. They're still there, but I'm choosing to actually take my gaze, if you like, my inner gaze away from them. We have that choice. Sometimes we don't think we have that choice. Sometimes we just think, well, they are me, and I've just got to live with it. But actually, when we become the noticer, we start to create a bit of perspective to them, and a bit of space with them, so we can start to see them, and yet then learn to create this peaceful place, or to touch the peaceful place and sit in the peaceful place. And then we can see all those other trains of thought, and we can actually, and especially when we learn to hold the quiet and take support in holding the quiet, we can really start to release, especially thoughts of worry, which are really no use to us whatsoever.
Right, thank you. Okay, so there's another question here. Can you share your personal experience of how you had made a connection with the higher source? What's the feeling? Can you share your experience? And it also says, how do I know I've made that connection? So you're
with the higher source.
With the higher source, yeah.
Well, certainly my feeling with this divine being has been quite strong throughout my life. It was very strong as a child, and it used to come. I didn't have a sense of being able to see with my mind's eye this one, but I always had a sense of this one's reality and this one's benevolence. And as a child, I remember singing songs to God, and my heart would start to lighten up, where actually I was quite a quiet and quite a depressed child generally, I would say. But when there were songs to God, it was like, oh, phew. I always felt a sense that this one was not judging, this one was not expecting, this one was not demanding anything from me, but was there and available. And I did have that as a child. But then for many, many years, there was no sense of of that one's presence or that one's support. And it was really, I mean, actually, apart from that, so occasionally if I went to a place of prayer, and it didn't matter particularly what place of prayer or what religion it was, but just the place itself, that, and usually when they were empty. So whether it was an empty church or an empty mosque or whatever it was, but just to walk into those places where again this spiritual, this subtle being is somehow being invoked, I used to get a real sense of that one's presence. But really when it really came alive was when I started to develop a Raj Yoga practice and get the tenets of Raj Yoga, which is this spiritual information that I am the eternal soul, and that the supreme soul, the supreme being, the being of benevolence again, that being that is loving, is my spiritual parent. As a soul to supreme soul, there is this relationship of child and parent. And how does it feel? How does it, do I experience it? This connection? Well, it just feels great. It just feels, again, like a complete release, and just feeling like I'm in love, I'm surrounded with love. And this one's gaze just absolutely holds me in complete regard, I think, if I'm going to put it. And when I'm being held in complete regard, then it's as though the soul again lets go of whatever else it's carrying. So it's a very, very sweet, sweet experience. And each time there is an experience is different, but each time there is that feeling is, I want to come back to this relationship. I want to come back to this connection, because it is too beautiful. And it also takes me out of all the heaviness, you know, that's within me, but also that's within this dear planet that we live on.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your own experience. And we got a few comments. Thank you for your beautiful talk, beautiful sharing. Wonderful. The word beautiful is coming up. There's another question here, actually. It's saying, can you give advice to someone who really struggles to kind of sit with themselves and find that quiet place? Any, tips for someone starting out on this journey?
Yeah, definitely. I would first of all say, don't try and sit. And me too, as a real struggler, because often it is when we sit and just be quiet that actually all our fears, all our worries, all the stuff that we suppress generally just to cope with life start to leap out from the corners and from the undergrowth of our mind. And so it can feel extremely uncomfortable, and many get put off by thinking, okay, I'm going to be a meditator, I'm going to sit with my legs cross-legged and what have you, and I'm going to go into a beautiful space and whatever, and nothing happens. And then it's very easy to get, and more than nothing happens, our fears start to leap out. So for me, and I would suggest to you too, is that if that happens, if you are one of those souls that all your worries come up, if you just sit for a few minutes by yourself, then instead of doing that, go for a walk, go into nature. Go, if I was in Leicester, I would say go and walk by that beautiful canal. But you go and find somewhere that's safe, but find some time for yourself so that you can be with yourself, but you're also using your physical energy. And in a sense, your mind has got still a few hooks, and especially in nature, because nature triggers in a sense. It's peace, it reflects, and generally it's harmony, it reflects that back to that part within the self. But as you walk, just remind the self that, you know, just as if you are walking in nature and the beauty of it, that beauty out there is in me. And to start to talk to the self with this gentle, kind dialogue, rather than the harsh one that is criticizing, that's saying I can't do it, that's saying, oh, I'm getting heavy with the self, but just staying very, very gentle with the mind. Treat the mind like a little baby that you want to love, and take care of, and take it on a walk and say, let me just open that place of peace as I'm moving about. Okay, if you don't like walking, maybe you've got another activity that you enjoy doing that doesn't require too much of your concentration, that you can, you know, have this conversation about finding that quiet place, and allowing that quiet place just to naturally actually pop up, show itself. And, you know, when all the worries do appear, even in that activity, if they're appearing, then just say, okay, I'm noticing you, but I'm going to choose to come back to this place that's deeper.
Great, lovely. You're getting lots of wonderful sharing. God bless you. And lots of thank yous coming through the chat. There's just finally, just to something that's been put on here actually, and to say that that line you quoted is sit in silence and see what happens. But yeah, can you explain that? They're saying sit and see what happens. I mean, just explain what's meant by that. They're saying.
Well, sit in silence and see what happens. If we really sit and I mean sit in the mind in silence, forget even sitting with the body in silence. But if I take the mind to a place of quiet, which is silence, and see what happens, there is that challenge in that. See what happens to actually feel the goodness, to feel the beauty, to feel the magic that is within me, within you. Because in that silent inner space is fullness. It's a long, long, long way from the emptiness that we often experience. That feeling of scarcity, that feeling of heaviness and weight. It's the opposite end of the spectrum in a sense. It's actually when the mind, and again, silence doesn't mean absence of thought. I'm still thinking, but those thoughts are creating harmony. Those thoughts are creating a sweet feeling. And so they don't leave an imprint. They're quiet. They're slow, actually. But they're loving, and so there's no noise in them. And yes, it may sound like a real, you know, far-fetched in a way when we see how noisy our inner world is. But when we really just even have faith in it, and trust that it is there, that sweet, quiet, silent place, that creative place is within me, and I can find it. But also, again, I mentioned, you know, the ingredient of connecting, and we can see the divine as like a spiritual sunshine that, you know, just like the physical sun, when it comes out, it just brings a completely new perspective to the land. You know, as night and then the sun comes and dawn comes, and the light, suddenly everything, all the colors come out. We see completely differently. In the same way as when I learn to connect into this place of quiet, and connect to the spiritual sun, which is radiant, benevolent, it's as though we start to see, you know, many more beautiful facets to the self that I had never noticed, or no one had never affirmed to me. Maybe they didn't notice either. Maybe I was just never expressing it, and I probably wasn't. But actually, with that one's help and support, I find these new discoveries inside the self that are beautiful and radiant. It's a journey though, and it takes time and it takes practice, doesn't it, Natalie?
Absolutely, but we keep going.
Yeah.
Lovely, that's great, lovely answer. Thank you. I hope everyone is satisfied with that. So can you lead us into a short meditation, please, Toots?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so wherever you are, whatever you're doing, as long as you're doing it safely and you don't need all your mind's attention, and if you can sit, great too. But just the main thing is to notice what is going on first and foremost inside my mind right now. And often we do a short mindful exercise to help us get to the place where we actually become present with ourselves, even before trying to go introvert and trying to access that well of peace at the heart of our being, just to become present and to notice actually the feelings in the body is a really good starting point. So let's do that. Let's notice the energy running through our body. Notice the energy in your fingertips. And notice the 5 senses on the face. How I see with these eyes. I listen with these ears. I smell with this nose. I taste this mouth. And then the 5th, the sense of touch. Just notice the sense of touch in your hands. And be present with that. And also notice your breath and become present with the gentle in and out breath. Feel the rhythm of the breath. Feel the rhythm of all the cyclical systems of the body. And as I do that, I am present with it. I am present with it. I am the 6th sense, the thinking, feeling, experiencing, expressing me. And visualize the thinking me. Visualize thoughts emerging from a place just behind the eyes, in front of the brain. And seeing this dot, this point of light. And as I visualize the self as a being of light, I'm also noticing all the clutter of thoughts. But I'm choosing now to be the tortoise and to come into this place of light that is free from tension. It is free from burden. It is light, like a room full of light and fresh vibrations. I enter this space, this inner space. I find the quiet that I so long for. It's inside. And I take support from beyond. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Toots. A couple of things I'm going to take away with me is this noticing. Kept talking about that, but it's such a nice word rather than check in. And I just like it's a softer word. So I liked this word, noticing, and those quiet moments in the day. It's a good reminder for me. And also, when you said a meditator is one that keeps their eyes open, yet they're looking inwards. And again, very nice definition. So those points touched me. So someone else said, thank you for a blissful meditation.
Thank you
very much. Lovely.
I can feel everyone's presence. Thank you all.
Nice energy. Thank
Happy
you.
Meditating.
Thank you. Lovely. Just to announce with you all that this coming Sunday, we have an event online at 2:00 and it's Honouring Life. And we have a panel of speakers, including Sister Genty. And the theme is Honouring Life, finding hope and newness. So you look on the Leicester website and you'll see it there. And also our Friday talk next week is Stepping into Happiness with Sister Suman. Stepping into Happiness. So take care, everyone, and have a good weekend and see you next Friday. Thank you. And once again, thanks, Toots. Hope to see you again soon with us.